Part 44. At the beginning, I gave the future empress her death. I became stronger because I was stupid. Author, Leng Mian Bulletin Leng. Chapter 431. Qin Mu really didn't expect that besides him, someone else could be so shameless, which was quite eye-opening for him. Isn't this faster than robbery? And he can still show off, which is a very profitable business. Qin Mu pinched his chin and fell into deep thought. Tianji Pavilion's method brought him some inspiration. In the future, he can also use the same method to collect protection fees. Those who are destined do not need to pay, and vice versa, they must pay. Of course, he has the final say whether there is fate or not. For example, for those beautiful fairies, he said they were destined to be fairies, so they didn't need to pay protection fees, but they had to make friends with them. After all, they are all destined to be friends, so it's not too much to make friends, right? Since we are all friends, it's not too much to kiss each other and go to bed, right? A very perfect set of procedures. Qin Mu couldn't help but nodded slightly, with a smile on his face. Not only Qin Mu, but also Li Qingluo and Mu Qingze looked amazed. Although they had heard of Tianji Pavilion, they were not familiar with it, so they did not know that their rules were so overbearing. Is this Tianji Pavilion? It's really overbearing, Mu Qingze murmured. But it does sound interesting. Everyone desires to be destined to be the one they are meant for, Li Qingluo said with bright eyes. She has a restless temper and has a deep yearning for new and exciting things. Mu Qingze also nodded in agreement. In the entire human race, only Tianji Pavilion dares to do this. If it were other forces, they would not dare to do this at all, otherwise it will definitely lead to disaster. While the three of them were chatting, another group of monks arrived on the high platform. This time there were 7 people on stage. Except for 4 male cultivators, the remaining 3 are female cultivators. The strength of the 3 female cultivators is not weak. The lowest has reached the peak of the 2nd level of Jean Dao, and the strongest has reached the peak of the 7th level of Jean Dao. This kind of lineup can be described as luxurious. Even if you look at the entire Qingyun domain, it is almost at the top level. On the high platform, the old man with a white beard looked at them, shook his head with regret, and said slowly, "Let's make the next batch." The 7 monks looked at each other with extremely embarrassed expressions on their faces. This Tianji Pavilion is too arrogant. There are so many of them who are not destined to be together. This is too shocking. Among the 7 monks, a woman in red showed a hint of annoyance on her pretty face, and asked in a cold tone, "Why can't we? Don't ask any more questions, get down quickly and don't block other people's way." The old man with the white beard glanced at them lightly, and said slowly without even bothering to answer. When the 7 people heard this, they suddenly became furious. One of them, a strong man, seemed to want to show off in front of the woman in red. He even pointed at the old man with a white beard on the high platform and shouted, "Old man with a beard, don't be so shameless. We have already paid for the spiritual crystals, but you tell us that we have no destiny. Aren't you sincerely trying to deceive people? You can even give us a casual fortune telling." The white-bearded old man snorted, "Humph. I said you are not destined to be a destined person, so you are not. At least for now, you are not worthy of being a destined person. Please go back." The strong man was furious and was about to teach the white-bearded old man a lesson when another handsome young man in a yellow shirt stopped and comforted him. "Senior brother, don't be anxious. We only want to see the splendor of Tianji Pavilion today. We must not have any grudges with Tianji Pavilion." "Then what should I do? This old guy is bullying me too much," the strong man yelled angrily. "Senior brother, these are the rules of Tianji Pavilion. You and I must abide by them." The handsome young man patted the strong man on the shoulder and said warmly. The strong man suppressed his anger and stood back, but still glared at the white-bearded old man on the stage, gritted his teeth and said, "What a Tianji Pavilion, we will remember what happened today. What? Not convinced, the white-bearded old man said calmly, since you don't want to leave, then I'll give you a ride. As he finished speaking, he raised his palm slightly and suddenly slapped it into the void. A vast and terrifying coercion spread instantly, locking several people tightly, making it difficult for them to move. This terrifying coercion enveloped several people, as if they were being suppressed by an invisible giant mountain, making them breathless. They desperately mobilized the energy in their bodies to resist, but it had no effect. Several people felt as if a big mountain hit their chests hard, their internal organs were churning, they were vomiting blood, and their faces were extremely pale. They stared at the old man with white beard in horror, their expressions were horrified. This old man has such terrifying strength. The white-bearded old man retracted his palm lightly and looked at them indifferently. His calm tone revealed an unquestionable flavor, "Go away, don't waste my patience anymore." Several people swallowed hard, with fear on their faces. After looking at each other, they immediately turned around and left in embarrassment, not daring to stay any longer. After learning this lesson, other monks who were ready to make a move also completely cut off their inner thoughts and stood there honestly. After they left, the old man with the white beard shook his head with disdain and said, "How could there be any clues in this little shabby place? How could the great elder and the pavilion master allocate me to such a place? However, complaints are complaints." The white-bearded old man remembered the solemn expressions of the great elder and the pavilion master before leaving, and he still did not dare to take it lightly. The Ziwei star moves, the emperor star descends, all things wither, the world restarts. The white-bearded old man thought of the hexagram that had been lingering in his mind, and his face became more solemn. It stands to reason that the Ziwei star moves and the emperor star descends should be a good omen, indicating that a new emperor will be born in the human race and lead the human race to glory again. But this hexagram is followed by a black shadow, a shadow that seems to be able to swallow the whole world. And the hexagram shows that the Ziwei star is also sometimes bright and sometimes dim, revealing a pessimistic taste, as if it is warning him about something. If these two situations are put together, it means that the human race will encounter unprecedented disasters in the future. And it is a disaster of extermination. But what is even more weird is that there seems to be a black dragon hovering outside the Ziwei star, as if it is stopping the shadow, and it seems to be a derivative of the shadow. Because the black dragon also exudes a palpitating breath, although it does not look like pure evil, it is definitely not a good thing. This kind of strange phenomenon has never been seen before. Their Tianji pavilion has existed for so many years, but has never seen such a phenomenon. At the beginning, I gave the future empress her death. I became stronger because I was stupid. Author, Leng Mian Buletin Leng. Chapter 432. What a strange hexagram. The white-bearded old man sighed inwardly, but he did not doubt the authenticity of the hexagram. Because this is jointly deduced by all the supreme elders of Tianji Pavilion based on the deduction method handed down from ancient times, it is absolutely correct. But he couldn't figure out what that shadow was. For this reason, the master of Tianji Pavilion ordered all Tianji Pavilions to be born, and used the reason of looking for destined people to find any possible clues. Is this hexagram a blessing or a curse? Could something unexpected happen? The white-bearded old man frowned and pondered. No matter what, this hexagram is related to the survival of mankind, and there is no room for sloppiness. The white-bearded old man sighed and said with emotion, "Oh, I don't know how long I have to be busy. Really, when will it be my old man's turn to take charge of Tianji Pavilion?" At this moment, there are more and more people in the square. Not only disciples from major sects, but also many casual cultivators and tourists also gathered here. Soon tens of thousands of people gathered and it was very lively. Most of these people came to Tianji Pavilion, hoping to be lucky enough to become a destined person and get a fortune from it. However, what disappointed everyone was that in the huge square, no one was destined to be from Tianji Pavilion. Whether they are young talents or powerful old men, they are all turned away. The white-bearded old man's expression didn't change much. He had already expected this result. After all, it was only his first day here. How could he meet the so-called destined person so easily? It seems we can only come back tomorrow. The old man with the white beard sighed and was already planning to leave. But the good thing is that he got a lot of good things from this trip, and it was not in vain. The white-bearded old man thought about the heavy spiritual crystals in his storage ring, and couldn't hide the smile on his face. At this time, everyone in the audience did not have any hope, and shook their heads and sighed. The conditions of Tianji Pavilion are too harsh. So many people can't even find a suitable person. Who makes us have low qualifications and no background? If we were the chosen ones from the top forces, we would have been destined to be the right ones. Hey, it seems that we are destined to miss Tianji Pavilion and have no choice but to leave. It's just a pity that I have 100 spiritual crystals, which I have worked so hard to save for a long time. Everyone discussed in low voices. Some were sad, some were full of regrets, and some were full of heartache. And at this time, inside the carriage, "Master, should we go over and take a look?" Li Qingluo blinked her watery eyes and looked at Qin Mu and said. Qin Mu stroked his forehead, obviously being interested. However, he did not plan to go by himself, but said calmly, "Go and take a look first." "As you command, Master." Li Qingluo smiled sweetly and immediately agreed happily. Mu Qingzi snuggled up next to Qin Mu obediently, her long and silky shawl hair hanging down to her waist, her red lips pursed slightly. "Master, She also wanted to see it. "You can go if you want." Qin Mu smiled gently. "Thank you, Master." Mu Qingzi raised her pretty face in surprise, her bright smile blooming like a spring flower. Xie Hongyi and Zhang Luoshan were not interested in this. Then Qin Mu parked the carriage on one side of the square. Mu Qingzi and Li Qingluo followed closely and walked into the square. At this time, the old man with the white beard is packing his things and preparing to leave. At this moment, the crowd under the high platform suddenly became restless. "Hiss, what a beautiful fairy!" They seemed to have stepped out of that ordinary carriage. Sure enough, that carriage is definitely not an ordinary thing. This is the most beautiful fairy I have ever seen. Oh my God, there is such a perfect person in this world. She is like a woman walking out of a painting. It's so beautiful, so holy, I feel like I'm going to stop breathing. Yes, it feels suffocating just standing there. The old man with a white beard followed everyone's gaze and found two girls with extremely beautiful appearance and cold temperament walking towards the high platform. Mu Qingzi was wearing a light blue dress, her skin was as good as snow, her black hair reached her waist, her eyes were clear and ethereal, and her figure was as slim and graceful as the moonlight goddess. She is already beautiful, coupled with her flawless skin and good figure. It instantly attracted the attention of countless people. Next to Mu Qingzi, Li Qingluo was also as beautiful as a dream, making people's hearts beat faster. Li Qingluo was wearing a lavender dress. She had a delicate appearance, fair and delicate skin, and a sweet smile with a slightly raised corner of her mouth. Li Qingluo is also extremely beautiful, but her figure is not as tall and perfect as Mu Qingzi's, but her proportions are very coordinated, with bulges where they should be and curls where they should. She is a complete beauty, sexy and charming. Of course, the two of them also possess a different kind of charm, which makes people unable to help but indulge in it, as if they are fairies coming to earth, and their beauty is beyond ordinary. Everyone's eyes fell on them and they couldn't move their eyes away. Especially the male monks were fascinated. Oh my God, who are these two beautiful fairies? How come I haven't heard of them before? I don't know if they come to Tianji Pavilion for fortune telling or something else. They must have come to Tianji Pavilion to tell fortunes. After all, None of the people here meet the criteria of a destined person. Hee, it would be great if they like me later. I don't know if these two fairies are married. If not, they might as well consider me. Stop dreaming. Why don't you take a piss and see what you look like? What's wrong? Everyone was whispering, their eyes were burning. Everyone was talking and speculating. When Li Qingluo and Mu Qingzi stepped into the range of the platform, the people around them held their breath and looked at them quietly. And the white-bearded old man on the platform was also stunned. The next moment, his heart was shocked, his eyes suddenly widened, staring at Mu Qingzi and Li Qingluo, his mouth slightly open. The destined person really appeared. And two appeared at once. They are all destined people. Two destined people appeared? No, no. The white-bearded old man's head was buzzing, and he was completely stunned. How could two destined people appear at the same time? Is this a joke? The white-bearded old man tried to calm himself down, and after taking a few deep breaths, he barely calmed down. He lowered his head quickly, and his 5 fingers kept pinching randomly, as if he was deducing something. The more he deduced, the stronger the shock in his heart became, and even his turbid pupils began to glow with a trace of blood. Looking at the white-bearded old man like this, Li Qingluo couldn't help but frown slightly, and looked at Mu Qingzi with a telepathic look. At this time, the people in the audience also realized something, and their faces were different. Some were envious, jealous, and ecstatic, but more were in disbelief. Are they destined people? You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. At the beginning, I gave the future empress her death. I became stronger because I was stupid. Author, Leng Mian Buletin Leng. Chapter 433. At first, everyone was just amazed at the beauty and temperament of the two women. But when they saw that the white-bearded old man did not even take the money and started to calculate with his fingers, then they realized a very important problem. It is very likely that one of the two women is destined to be together. After all, judging from the old man's behavior just now, he would never start to calculate with his fingers without taking the money. Not to mention that he would not act like he saw a ghost, and even lose his master style. Oh my God, I didn't expect that there would really be a destined person today. But why does the old man look a little excited? Yes, didn't he just see the destined person? Is it necessary to be so excited? Maybe there is another secret in this. You are right, I also suspect it. Everyone whispered, and the originally quiet crowd burst into a burst of noise. Everyone's expression changed in 1,000 ways, their eyes were wide open, and they stared at Li Qingluo and Mu Qingzi on the stage. Although they were not destined to be together, they really wanted to know what was so special about the destined to be together in the eyes of Tianji Pavilion. Now, they suddenly understood why they were not destined to be together. These two women were like fairies descending from the earth, with unworldly temperament, stunning appearance, and innate fairy spirit. It was really difficult to describe their beauty in words. Even though they had lived for so long, had rich experience, and had seen all kinds of beauties, they were still fascinated by the two and couldn't help swallowing their saliva. Everyone cast their eyes on the high platform. They were nervous and excited, and they were eager to know the origins and identities of the two women. Of course, there was also a trace of jealousy, envy, and greed that were inevitable in human nature. In the crowd, two men in gorgeous clothes also looked at the stage with burning eyes. Second brother, you are right. That carriage is not an ordinary thing. If I had known there were two beautiful fairies inside, I would have gone up to say hello. One of the men stared at the stage without blinking, and said in an extremely annoyed tone. The man called the second brother shook his head gently, with a solemn look on his face. I warn you, Don't mess around. Their identities are not yet known, and they are suspected to be destined to be with TNG Pavilion. Don't cause trouble. Oh, since we have met, it would be rude not to say hello. No, I have to get to know them. After saying that, the younger man stepped forward and walked straight towards the platform. Third brother, stop right there. The man called the second brother hurriedly grabbed the boy, his head full of black lines. What are you doing? The boy turned around and shouted angrily. I warn you, it's best not to cause trouble, the second brother said with a cold face. Even if you want to say hello, you have to wait until they come down from the stage. This face should be given to TNG Pavilion. Okay, I know, the young man curled his lips and responded, and then continued to look at Li Qingluo and the other two girls on the high platform, his expression full of interest. On this side, the white-bearded old man was still calculating frantically, with beads of sweat dripping from his forehead, and his whole demeanor seemed particularly painful and tired. Li Qingluo and Mu Qingze looked at him quietly, without any intention of urging him. No. No. Strange, strange. The white-bearded old man repeated it over and over again, and his face was covered with fine cold sweat. The big beads of sweat fell crackling and splashed on the floor. His deduction seemed to have encountered some obstacles, which prevented him from completing the deduction smoothly. The white-bearded old man's face became paler and paler, his eyeballs bulged and bloodshot, his lips trembled, and his legs couldn't help shaking. Finally, he simply sat cross-legged on the ground as if no one was around, and took out a few simple jade pieces from under his sleeves. Buzz, 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 buzz. The jade pieces emitted a soft halo, suspended in the air, emitting a mysterious breath fluctuation. When these jade pieces appeared, rich spiritual power instantly surged around the high platform. And the jade pieces also began to emit a faint halo. These halos seemed to be attracted by something and all gathered on the high platform. Finally, a complicated spell pattern was outlined in the air, flashing a dazzling golden light. The white-bearded old man sat cross-legged in the center of the suspended jade piece, closed his eyes, and looked solemn and dignified, like a clay statue. But the sweat on his forehead had wet his temples, making him look quite embarrassed. What's going on? This is. Seeing this scene, Xuanhuan, who was still in the carriage, felt a little bad. She was very familiar with the other party's state. Because there was a Tianjia in the Kanyu dynasty, who also practiced the art of deduction. Although he was not as powerful as the TNG Pavilion, he was also quite accomplished. He had made countless contributions to the Kanyu dynasty and enjoyed a very high reputation in the Kanyu dynasty. She had seen with her own eyes that when Tianjia was fortune-telling about Dakin, he would fall into a strange state. It is said that he suffered a backlash, which made him fall into a state of madness. Not only would he talk nonsense, but he would also cry for no reason, just like a demon. And now the state that the other party just revealed is very similar to that of Tianjia at the beginning. So she knew from the way the white-bearded old man was calculating with his fingers just now that he must have figured out something. Moreover, the result shocked and horrified the white-bearded old man. Of course, the white-bearded old man's deduction attainments were obviously higher than Tianjia's. After he took out the jade pieces, his condition was obviously better. Your Majesty. Xuanhuan looked at Qin Mu and asked, hoping to get some instructions. Don't worry, nothing will happen. Qin Mu smiled and comforted, without any worry on his face, as if he didn't take the things on the stage seriously at all. Oh. Xuanhuan was relieved after hearing his words, nodded slightly, and continued to observe the situation on the stage. At this moment on the high platform, the golden talisman pattern covering the high platform suddenly accelerated its rotation. And everyone present felt a vast and majestic energy fluctuation emanating from the jade pieces. It made many people stand on end, horrified. Is this the deduction technique of Tianjia? Huh. Isn't this the sect-defining technique of TNG Pavilion? It is said that everything in the sky and on the ground can be calculated from ancient times to the present. I didn't expect that it would be used. I've learned a lot. This is the first time I've seen it. Yes, I heard that the way TNG Pavilion treats people with predestined relationships is just to count with fingers. It has never been as grand as it is now. I guess these two fairies are not simple, otherwise they wouldn't even bring out the sect-defining technique of TNG Pavilion. Hee, it seems that there will be excitement tonight. Everyone was talking about it, guessing what the two beautiful women on the stage were like, and why TNG Pavilion treated them so carefully. On the stage, Mukingzi also looked at the old man on the stage. Although she didn't understand these, she also noticed a hint of abnormality. It seemed that there was a powerful and terrifying aura that locked her tightly, trying to see through her past experiences. But that powerful aura seemed to be afraid to approach her, as if it had encountered something that frightened it, and it didn't dare to really approach. This gave Mukingzi an incomparable sense of security, as if she had returned to her childhood, a little girl protected by her father. Mukingzi was confused, and her eyes subconsciously looked at the carriage behind her. A light flashed in her mind. It's the master. That's right, it must be the master who is protecting her. Only the master can do all this. Mukingzi's pretty face turned red, she lowered her head, raised a shallow arc at the corner of her mouth, and revealed a happy smile. She was protected by her father when she was a child, and she was still protected by Dad when she grew up. This is probably the happiest thing. At the beginning, I gave the future empress her death. I became stronger because I was stupid. Author, Len Mian Buletin Leng. Chapter 434. Suddenly, Mukingzi raised her eyebrows, gently raised her eyes and scanned the surroundings of the platform, her eyebrows slightly wrinkled. She keenly felt that the spiritual power around her quickly gathered towards the platform again, forming a spiritual power vortex visible to the naked eye. At the same time, on the stage. Buzz, buzz, buzz. The jade pieces suspended around the white-bearded old man kept trembling, making a deafening buzzing sound. Boom. Suddenly, a dull sound resounded throughout the square. The golden jade pieces that were originally suspended in the air suddenly burst into a dazzling light, illuminating the entire sky. Then these jade pieces made a crisp sound of crackling, and then they shattered into powder and disappeared. At the same time, an unimaginable pressure spread out, sweeping in all directions. Puff. The white-bearded old man groaned and spit out a large mouthful of bright red liquid. His body shook, his face was extremely pale, and his whole person's spirit seemed to have been drained away, and he was listless. Cough, cough. The white-bearded old man was panting heavily, his eyes were closed, his face was full of pain, and his whole face was covered with cold sweat. What's going on? What happened? Why did this jade piece suddenly break? Something must have happened here. Look at this senior, he seems to be injured. Impossible, with the means of TNG Pavilion, it shouldn't be like this. Could it be? The crowd around was in a commotion, everyone showed a look of surprise, staring at the white-bearded old man on the high platform in amazement, as if they had seen a ghost. They still remembered the strength of the white-bearded old man just now, but in the blink of an eye, he vomited blood because of a fortune-telling, and his expression was depressed. They just wanted to ask, is it that serious? This style of painting changed too quickly, and many people couldn't adapt to it for a while. Some people began to doubt the strength of the white-bearded old man, and even thought that he was pretending to be TNG Pavilion. Finally, after half an incense stick, the old man with white beard finally slowly opened his eyes. He seemed to have suffered a great shock, and his eyes were red. Plop. The old man's body softened and he lay straight on the ground. His expression was still dull, his eyes were dull, and his look was blank. Seeing this scene, The crowd in the audience was in an uproar again. What's going on? I don't know. Why do you look stupid? Did this senior make a mistake in his divination? It shouldn't be. Since he is from the TNG Pavilion, how could he make a mistake? Yes, the TNG Pavilion has a long history and should not make such a low-level mistake. Could it be that the divination he made is false? Facing the discussion of the crowd below the stage, the white-bearded old man had no reaction. He just stared at the sky in a daze, as if doubting his life, muttering to himself. How could this be? It shouldn't be. Heaven's will cannot be violated, heaven's way cannot be deceived, heaven's will cannot be predicted. At this time, the old man's body was trembling, blood kept gushing out of his mouth, staining his chest red, and he opened his eyes with difficulty, looking weak. The old man looked at the sky, his eyes filled with endless regret, and he cursed secretly. Damn it, I shouldn't have told this fortune, how much food do I have to eat to make up for it? But after cursing, he suddenly laughed, like a child who got a toy, his beard twitching. But this time I must have gained the most, those old guys would never have thought of it, he. After laughing, he seemed to recall something terrible, as if he had encountered a flood and a beast, his eyes were full of fear, and he begged for mercy. Don't come over, don't come over. I didn't provoke you. I really didn't provoke you, woo, I'm sorry, I was wrong, please don't come over. The voice of the white-bearded old man was shrill and wailing. He became more and more afraid and shrill as he spoke. He cried and begged, filled with deep fear and despair, like a poor dog that had lost its home. This stunned everyone in the audience. No one expected that a great master of the TNG Pavilion would be so scared. It seems that he is possessed. Yeah, I think so. It really looks like he is possessed. This old man is in trouble now. It really deserves it. Who made him so greedy? Retribution is coming. Everyone speculated, but no one dared to step forward, because a person who is possessed will not recognize his relatives. If he is killed by a palm, there will be no place to cry. Senior, Mukingzi called softly. But the white-bearded old man seemed not to hear it. He still looked at the sky, muttering constantly, laughing and crying, and shaking his head wildly from time to time, as if he was trapped in a demon barrier. Li Qingluo looked at the scene and was suddenly worried. This old man is not in a good state. Is he crazy? Mukingzi also frowned. Of course, she was not worried that the other party was crazy. Instead, they were worried that TNG Pavilion would blame them for the other party's madness, which might bring some trouble to their master. Sister, let's leave first. Li Qingluo obviously thought of this, and pulled Mukingzi's sleeve and reminded softly. Well, okay. Mukingzi nodded, and took Li Qingluo away from the platform. Ahem. Just as they stepped off the platform, a man in gorgeous clothes came out of the crowd impatiently, and smiled at Mukingzi and Li Qingluo. Two fairies, welcome to Twilight City. My name is Lin Yifei, and I am the son of the Lord of Twilight City. I wonder if you are interested in taking a look around Twilight City. As he said, Lin Yifei took out 2 golden tokens and handed them to Mukingzi, and continued to smile. This is the Twilight token. You will receive the highest level of treatment in Twilight City. All your expenses in Twilight City will be free in the future. He handed the token over directly, and he didn't seem to worry that others would refuse. Twilight City is a prosperous city. Although it is not as good as those cities run by the holy places, it is also a first-class city. He believed that no one would refuse the temptation of all for free. It turned out to be the third son of Twilight City, Lin Yifei. It is said that this man is the second generation of Twilight City. He relies on his father being the Lord of Twilight City. He is idle all day and harms the beauties in the city. Hundreds of beautiful girls have been harmed by him this year. These 2 fairies are so beautiful. I guess they are targeted by this guy. Alas. Alas. This guy is a complete hypocrite. He is obviously a lustful thief, but he pretends to be a gentleman. SHH, shut up. Do you think your head is falling off too slowly? This is a taboo topic in Twilight City. When the people around saw Lin Yifei, they immediately talked about it. There was anger in their words, and they were also worried about the two fairies. Being targeted by this second-generation rich kid is definitely not a good thing. Hearing these comments, Lin Yifei felt even more proud. He also liked the way others were unhappy with him but couldn't get rid of him. However, the next second, his smile froze on his face forever. At the beginning, I gave the future empress her death. I became stronger because I was stupid. Author, Len Mian Buletin Leng. Chapter 435. Swish. Accompanied by the sound of a sharp sword breaking through the air. A cold light flashed, and a brilliant silver light streaked across the air, fiercely slashing down on Lin Yifei's outstretched right arm. Kaka. A crisp bone-breaking sound rang out, followed by a burst of severe pain throughout the body, and Lin Yifei screamed heartbreakingly. Ah! My hand! He stared with his eyes wide open. His eyes were bloodshot, full of shock, panic, horror, and disbelief. What's going on? What's going on? How could my arm fall off? He desperately raised his left hand, but found that his left hand had disappeared, and the broken arm was bleeding. Shocking. Lin Yifei looked down. Blood spurted out, staining a large area of the stone road red. The hand that originally held the two golden tokens had already been cut off at the root and fell to the ground. Shocking. The two golden tokens fell to the side, covered with blood and dust. All this happened in a flash, and no one could even see what hurt him. They only felt that Lin Yifei's wrist had been cut off. Hiss. There was a sound of gasping around, and everyone couldn't help shrinking their necks. I only felt a sharp murderous aura coming towards me, and my hair stood up and I was sweating. The person who just made the move was clearly the fairy in the light blue skirt. In fact, they didn't see it clearly, but because they were staring at it, they happened to capture some shots. The speed was so fast that they couldn't react at all. When they saw it clearly, the fairy had already stood back to her original position, with an indifferent expression, as if she had done nothing. What a terrible strength! This sentence emerged in everyone's mind at the same time. And not only is the strength terrible, but the character is also very cruel. Cutting off someone's arm for a disagreement is too fierce. Everyone couldn't help swallowing their saliva, their backs were cold, and they couldn't help but take a step back. These two fairies, you can't mess with them. Seeing Lin Yifei's miserable state, everyone around couldn't help but sigh and shook their heads. Although this second-generation ancestor is a bit dandy, he is indeed very powerful, with a very strong talent for cultivation, and is a leader among the younger generation of Twilight City. However, he met a tough guy today. The two seemingly weak fairies were not ambiguous at all. Let's see if he dares to be so arrogant in the future. My hand, my hand. Lin Yifei covered his broken arm and wailed in pain. The piercing pain from the broken arm almost made him faint, and beads of sweat oozed from his forehead. He hurriedly used his power to block the acupuncture points on the broken arm with his spiritual power to stop bleeding and prevent further bleeding. Then he took out the healing pill with his other intact hand and stuffed it into his mouth. But even so, the arm still couldn't recover for the time being, tilted to one side, like a deformed child. Lin Yifei's face was distorted with pain. He covered the wound of his broken arm, his face full of resentment, and looked at Mu Qingze with gritted teeth. You actually cut off my hand. He never expected that this fairy who looked delicate would be so cruel as soon as she attacked, and actually cut off his hand directly. However, Mu Qingze didn't pay any attention to him at all, and didn't even look at him more. She just took Li Qingluo away directly, as if she was just dealing with a piece of garbage. Although she was worried about causing trouble for her master, facing such scum, Mukingze believed that her master would not take it to heart at all. Such a result made Lin Yifei even more angry. "Asshole," he roared, his eyes turned red. From childhood to adulthood, no one dared to ignore him like this. "I'm going to kill you, Lin Yifei roared. Mukingze didn't even bother to look back at him, but after walking 2 steps, she suddenly stopped. Not far ahead, a group of people blocked their way. The leader was a burly, 2-meter tall man with a strong back and a resolute face, giving people an explosive pressure. Behind this man, there was a group of black-clothed guards, as many as 70 or 80. The weakest of them had the 5th level of the Dao of Slashing Realm, and the strongest ones were all around the 7th level of the Dao of Slashing Realm. There were even 2 half-step saints, and their aura was very powerful. "Dare to hurt my young city lord, are you looking for death?" The burly, strong man, who looked like a black tower, stared at Mukingze and roared. "Uncle Iron Tower! Stop them for me!" Lin Yifei pointed at Mukingze and roared hysterically. "Don't worry, young master, I promise that they will not be able to escape this time." The burly man grinned and revealed his white fangs. After that, he turned around and shouted at Mukingze and the other 2 girls. "Which faction are you from? You are so brave, do you know whose territory this is? How dare you hurt the young city lord? Are you tired of living?" He spoke word by word, his voice was loud and aggressive, as ferocious as a mad lion. Mukingze frowned slightly when she heard this, a trace of disgust appeared in her beautiful eyes, and she said a word lightly, "Get out." Her voice was cold and emotionless. "Hee, the little girl has a very fierce temper, but I tell you, no one in Twilight City has ever dared to disobey this young master. What's more, I just wanted to make friends with you with good intentions, but you turned your kindness into hatred. You are really ungrateful. If that's the case, then it's not my fault." Lin Yifei cursed with a ferocious face and gnashed his teeth. His expression was gloomy and full of resentment, and he was obviously really angry. He had his arm cut off by others and was injured. This was a great shame and humiliation for Lin Yifei, who was pampered and arrogant in his daily life. "Humph," Mukingze sneered lightly, but did not say anything. How could she waste her breath on a scum like Lin Yifei? "Uncle Tita, don't talk nonsense with them, quickly catch them, I want them to be tortured to death." Lin Yifei limped over with a gloomy face, and smiled ferociously. As soon as he finished speaking, he winked at the strong man, indicating that they should be caught. The sturdy man immediately understood, stretched out his big hand, and grabbed Mukingze. He was a saint, with outstanding talent in cultivation and powerful strength. He was also considered the top master in the entire Twilight City. At this moment, he was even more ruthless, ready to show his loyalty in front of Lin Yifei. The next moment, the sturdy man suddenly disappeared from the spot, and when he appeared again, he was in front of Mukingze and leaking glue. Boom! The sturdy man punched out, and the whole air was shaking violently, and there was a faint sound of thunder in the air. Under one punch, the wind and clouds changed. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. At the beginning, I gave the future empress her death. I became stronger because I was stupid. Author, Len Mian Buletin Leng. Chapter 436. At that moment, the spiritual energy in the air boiled and gathered around his fist, turning his entire fist into a purple gold sun, emitting destructive fluctuations. The power of this punch was too terrifying, and everyone around couldn't help but retreat, fearing that they would be caught in the crossfire. The strong man's expression became more and more excited, and his eyes were extremely hot, as if he had seen the miserable appearance of Mu Kingzi and the others under his fist. The speed of this attack was as fast as lightning, and the power was even more terrifying. If an ordinary cultivator in the Jean Dao realm was hit by this heavy punch, he would probably have his bones and muscles broken in an instant and his body shattered. Although this strong man had never practiced a particularly powerful technique, his tempering of the flesh had already surpassed that of ordinary saints by several times. With his flesh alone, he could compete with saints. Such a terrifying attack, if it were an ordinary saint, he would definitely avoid it. But facing his attack, Mu Kingzi was not afraid. She stretched out her slender jade arm and pushed forward fiercely. However, at this time, a more powerful force erupted from the high platform. Boom! All the surrounding buildings collapsed instantly, wood chips flew, dust filled the air, and boulders splashed everywhere. A series of crackling thunders suddenly resounded in the air. The next moment, a huge purple-gold talisman emerged in the void, carrying a monstrous thunder, and fell towards the strong man. Bang! Accompanied by the earth-shaking collision, the purple-gold talisman fell heavily on the chest of the strong man. The strong man trembled all over, staggered, and stepped back more than 10 steps before he could stabilize his heels. However, this was just the beginning. I saw that the talismans continued to condense, and in the blink of an eye, they turned into a purple-gold thunder dragon about 100 feet long, carrying a destructive force and attacking again. This purple-gold thunder dragon was amazing and majestic, as if it was a real god descending to the world, with the power to destroy everything. The sturdy man's face was horrified, his pupils contracted, and he felt a strong sense of crisis rushing into his mind, making him feel cold all over, and he couldn't help but feel his soul was about to die. He had no time to dodge, and could only watch the purple-gold thunder dragon roaring towards him. The purple-gold thunder dragon slapped out with one claw, and the entire void collapsed instantly, the air exploded, and turned into an endless strong wind, distorting the space and suffocating people. Bang! The next second, the whole body of the sturdy man was slapped away fiercely, like a cannonball that cut through the sky, and fell directly more than 10 meters away, smashing a deep pit on the ground. In the smoke, everyone only heard a muffled puff, and blood spurted out of the sturdy man's mouth, staining the ground red. His eyes were wide open, his pupils were dilated, and he had fainted. However, the purple-gold thunder dragon was still relentless, as if it would not stop until it killed the sturdy man, and continued to swoop down and hit the sturdy man fiercely. Boom! With a muffled sound, under the gaze of everyone, the whole torso of the strong man burst directly, and blood was dripping. Hiss! Seeing this scene, everyone gasped and was stunned. They couldn't help but gasp. This is a real saintly strong man, and he died just like that? How is it possible? Seeing this scene, the guards were all stunned, almost suspecting that they had seen it wrong. Their leader, Uncle Tita, was defeated with just one move. What is going on? Especially Lin Yifei, who was even more frightened, dumbfounded, staring at the scene in a daze, his heart seemed to be blocked by something, and it was difficult to breathe. One move. Just one move, and the strong man was killed in seconds. Lin Yifei was filled with horror, and his whole body couldn't help trembling, and a strong chill rose in his heart. Everyone looked up in horror, and saw a white-bearded old man with blood on his mouth standing on the high platform. The purple-gold thunder dragon just now was cast by him. Mu Kingzi and Li Qingluo were also stunned. They didn't expect that this old man who looked crazy would help them block the attack. Although they didn't need it at all. Cough, cough, cough. The white-bearded old man coughed a few times and spit out a few mouthfuls of blood. It was hard to believe that the attack that killed the saint in seconds was cast by him. I have said in advance that you are not allowed to make trouble when you are looking for a destined person in Tianji Pavilion. Since someone doesn't listen, you can't blame me for being ruthless. The white-bearded old man glanced at Lin Yifei indifferently, and slowly spoke, his tone calm and indifferent. "You," Lin Yifei gritted his teeth and looked at the white-bearded old man, wishing to tear him to pieces. But seeing the cold eyes on the old man's face, he shuddered and didn't dare to say anything. When testing the destined people before, a few people had disobeyed the rules of the white-bearded old man and provoked him. That was because they didn't know the weight of the words Xuanhuan Tianji Pavilion, and as the young city lord of Twilight City, he naturally knew it very well, so he didn't dare. He knew that the crazy old man in front of him was definitely qualified to say that. Although Lin Yifei was used to being arrogant and domineering, and even bullied men and women and took human lives lightly on weekdays, he was very afraid of the white-bearded old man. At this time, another man walked out of the crowd, with a handsome face, wearing brocade clothes, and a noble aura. He looked at the old man with a white beard apologetically and said, "I'm sorry, old sir, I am Lin Feng, the young city lord of the Twilight City Lord's Mansion. It's my third brother Lin Yifei's fault today, and I will make amends for him. I hope you will, sir, don't take into account the faults of villains." Then he looked at Lin Yifei and scolded, "Third brother, you are too presumptuous. Please apologize to the old gentleman and the two fairies." Hearing this, Lin Yifei looked angry and felt extremely aggrieved. He, the majestic young city lord of Twilight City, had never suffered such injustice. "Second brother, don't stop me. I have to teach these two bitches a lesson today," Lin Yifei gritted his teeth and said. Third brother Lin Feng frowned and shouted in a deep voice. "They broke off my hand," Lin Yifei shouted loudly, with a look of grievance on his face. But Lin Feng just looked at him and said nothing. "Okay, I give up." Lin Yifei finally compromised. Although he was a playboy and domineering, Lin Feng was his second brother and had doted on him since childhood, and he was unwilling to disobey him on such a major matter. Lin Yifei had a look of resentment on his face, and then he turned around, stared at Mu Qingzi and Li Qingluo fiercely, gritted his teeth and said, "I'm sorry, I was reckless just now. I hereby solemnly apologize to you, please forgive me." This scene suddenly silenced the scene, and there was no sound. Just when everyone thought that this matter should come to an end, a faint voice came from behind them. "If an apology works, then what else do the police need? At the beginning, I gave the future empress her death. I became stronger because I was stupid." Author, Len Mian Buletin Leng. Chapter 437. The voice was very light, but it sounded like thunder in the ears of the people around, shaking everyone's heart. Although they didn't understand what the police meant, they could clearly hear the teasing in the words. Moreover, this was said in front of Lin Feng, the young master of Twilight City. This is a bit intriguing. Everyone immediately looked towards the source of the sound, and saw a thin and tall young figure walking out of the carriage. Lin Yifei also looked in the direction of the figure, and when he saw the other person's face, he couldn't help but be stunned for a moment, and his face changed slightly. Because the other person was so handsome, with sword eyebrows and starry eyes, his angular facial features revealed a hint of evil and coldness, and with a black robe, he looked mysterious. Especially his pair of dark and deep eyes, as if containing a vast universe of stars, people couldn't help but fall into it. At this moment, he had a cynical and evil smile on his lips, seemingly relaxed, but with a hint of arrogance. He walked slowly with his hands behind his back. Whether in temperament or appearance, he was several times more handsome than him, which made Lin Yifei feel jealous. Looking at the people around him, they all seemed to be amazed by each other's appearance. They stared at each other blankly, and there were many crazy girls staring at him. Even the peerless Mu Qingzi and the pure and moving Li Qingluo were all obsessed with him. They stared at him as if they had lost their souls in an instant. That look was as if he had seen his own god. There was admiration and dependence in his eyes. A blush appeared on his beautiful face, and it seemed that there was also a hint of spring. It was completely different from the attitude he had just treated him. This feeling made Lin Yifei feel jealous. Lin Feng's face darkened, and he could not help but feel angry in his heart, and his fists clenched and crackled. He roared in his heart, "Why? Why do all the beautiful women like to look at him? Why do they look like crazy? How is this possible? Who is this guy? He is even more handsome than me." Lin Yifei's eyes flashed with viciousness and jealousy, and he stared at Qin Mu. However, when he sensed the fluctuation of spiritual power in the other party's body, a trace of disdainful sarcasm appeared on the corner of his mouth again, and he cursed secretly, "Pretentious." Because he felt a not so strong spiritual power fluctuation from the other party, probably only at the Yuanshen realm, and the breath was sometimes there and sometimes not, and seemed very empty. It is estimated that it was just the cultivation that was forcibly improved with the help of some treasures or elixirs. And he had already reached the first level of the Zhandao realm with his own efforts and talent. He could kill dozens of such garbage with a wave of his hand. Thinking of this, Lin Yifei was relieved immediately. He stared coldly at the black figure that was constantly walking towards him, and sneered, "Pretentious." But what he didn't notice was that the old man of Tianji Pavilion on the high platform frowned slightly. There was a trace of doubt in his eyes, and he muttered to himself, "Strange, did I sense it wrong just now? This person's breath seems a little strange." The white-bearded old man's eyes were full of confusion. He looked at Qin Mu seriously, as if he wanted to see something. But after looking at it for a long time, he didn't rely on his eyesight to find any clues. The other party seemed to be a very ordinary and normal cultivator. Except for his special temperament, everything else was normal. At least he didn't see anything special. But the moment the other party just walked out of the carriage, he clearly felt a little strange, but when he carefully checked, he found nothing. Am I worrying too much? The white-bearded old man shook his head and immediately denied this idea. Because when he was facing Mu Qingzi and Li Qingluo, he could still see the special features of the other party with his eyesight, but when facing Qin Mu, he could not see anything special at all. It is absolutely impossible to be so simple. The other party was able to walk out of the carriage, which was already very difficult. The white-bearded old man pondered for a moment, looked down at his hands, and then gritted his teeth fiercely. Isn't it just one more time? I don't believe it. At most, I will spit blood again. Thinking of this, the white-bearded old man put his right palm on his chest, closed his eyes, and chanted a string of obscure spells. After a moment, the white-bearded old man suddenly opened his eyes and raised his right palm at the same time. He pointed a finger at his forehead, and his whole face turned pale. Puff! Blood spurted out. However, the white-bearded old man ignored it. He sprinkled the blood on his fingers and began to calculate. While he was calculating with his fingers, Qin Mu had already walked in front of Lin Feng. As for the Lin Yifei with the broken palm, Qin Mu didn't even look at him, and naturally ignored him, as if this person didn't exist from beginning to end. This made Lin Yifei tremble with anger, and he almost couldn't help but explode like thunder. He was the third son of Twilight City. On weekdays, everyone who saw him was polite, but today not only did he lose face by having his arm cut off, but he was also ignored by a weak person whom he didn't even take seriously, which made him murderous. If it weren't for his second brother being here, he would have started to mobilize people a long time ago. But even so, he had already begun to secretly inform his father. He had to get his revenge today, at least to save face, otherwise how could he survive in Twilight City in the future? At this moment, everyone's attention was focused on Qin Mu's figure. They were all a little surprised at this time, because no one knew this boy who suddenly appeared. Don't know him. Could he be from the outside world? He looks about 20 years old. I wonder which sect he is from. He is so arrogant. The power behind him must be very powerful, right? It's hard to say. But judging from the situation, the two fairies seem to be familiar with him. I just don't know what the relationship between them and this boy is. What else could it be? Didn't you see that the eyes of the two fairies were almost tearing? It's impossible. I don't think his cultivation is very strong. How could he be admired by two fairies at once? I don't understand. Maybe his background is very powerful. But shouldn't people with powerful backgrounds travel in a grand manner? Why is there only an ordinary carriage? This doesn't fit their style, right? I guess that the boy must have deliberately concealed his strength. This is called being low-key. Do you understand? Anyway, no matter what, there will be another good show to watch. At the beginning, I gave the future empress her death. I became stronger because I was stupid. Author, Len Mi and Buletin Leng. Chapter 438. Various discussions were heard, and everyone was whispering and talking to each other. Only Lin Yifei looked at Qin Mu with a colder look, and there was a strong hatred and murderous intent in his eyes. Lin Yifei heard all kinds of voices in his ears, and he wanted to rush out and tell everyone that this boy was a waste and was not worthy of the two fairies. But because of Lin Feng's shocking eyes, he didn't dare to do anything. My fellow Taoist, I don't know what you meant by that sentence just now. Lin Feng first warned Lin Yifeng with his eyes not to act rashly, and then looked at Qin Mu and asked with a frown. Although he looked calm on the surface, he had already set off a storm in his heart. He couldn't see through this boy. This is too weird. He has practiced for hundreds of years. Although his cultivation is not as good as those old monsters in the Saint Venerable realm, his eyesight is unquestionable. But this boy who looks less than 20 years old, he can't see through. There are only two reasons for this situation. One is that the boy's strength is far superior to his, even far superior to his. The second is that the boy's secret book of martial arts is very magical, or there is some magic weapon that conceals his cultivation. This is the most likely reason. Oh, it's nothing, I just don't like that idiot. Qin Mu glanced at Lin Yifei lightly, and then retracted his gaze. Hearing this, Lin Yifei's mouth twitched twice. Although he tried his best to restrain his anger, the haze in his eyes still couldn't cover it up, showing his inner anger. Calling him an idiot in front of him is a naked provocation and insult. It's a pity that Lin Feng didn't allow him to mess around. Otherwise, he might have already attacked Qin Mu directly, and he wouldn't be able to continue to jump around. But even if he did, he might not get any benefit. Because Lin Yifei was still very afraid of the white-bearded old man from Tianji Pavilion on the high platform. If he angered this old thing again, he would definitely be the one who would be unlucky. It was really frustrating to think about it. Twilight City was obviously his territory, but he was restricted everywhere and couldn't even teach his enemies a lesson. Thinking of this, Lin Yifei couldn't help but look back at the white-bearded old man, and found that the other party was still counting on his fingers. He couldn't help but curse in his heart, idiot. Then he retracted his gaze and stared at Qin Mu again, wishing to eat him alive. But now he could only suppress his anger and wait until his father sent someone to rescue him. He believed that as long as his father came, he would definitely make this kid want to live or die. And those two fairies, he would also. Lin Yifei just thought of this, and the smile on his face didn't have time to unfold, and suddenly froze again. His sight extended to the distance, and two fairy-like beauties walked down from the carriage. A woman in a fiery red dress has a graceful figure and exquisite curves. The red dress outlines her perfect figure. Her peerless face is like an elf, pure and flawless, beautiful and unparalleled, making the world lose its color, just like the nine heavens' mysterious lady descending, beautiful beyond description. Another woman is wearing a white gauze dress, her skin is crystal clear, like white jade, her eyes are like water, clear and incomparable, her nose is slightly upturned, Her lips are crystal clear, beautiful, and charming. Especially the pair of cold eyes exudes an aura that keeps people away from thousands of miles, making people dare not approach. They stand side by side, like two beauties, making people unable to look away, attracting the attention of countless people. The appearance of the two fairies immediately caused an uproar. As the two walked, they were like lotus flowers, graceful and pleasing to the eye, beautiful beyond words. At this moment, the whole audience was silent, almost audible if a pin dropped. Everyone was stunned there. These two women are not only breathtakingly beautiful, but also noble and elegant. They are filled with sacred radiance, like immortals from the earth. Their appearance seemed to dim the entire sky in an instant. Everyone was taken away by them and forgot everything. Only the two of them existed. The two slowly walked to the center of the square and stood with Mu Qingzi and Li Qingluo. Then, four stunningly beautiful women appeared on the field. The four women stood beside Qin Mu. Especially the respectful posture, obviously willing to become the background and follow Qin Mu's lead. Hiss. Everyone took a breath again, feeling a roar in their heads. What is going on? Four peerless fairies are willing to be the maids of this young man. Who is this young man? Why is he so powerful? Could he be a saint who came out of a hidden sect to experience? This scene simply shocked everyone's eyes, and they all felt their heads buzzing. They couldn't help but wonder if their judgment was wrong. This was too hard to believe. Four beautiful fairies. Is this boy related to these four fairies? Could he be a disciple trained by a big force or a big section? That should be the case, otherwise such four stunning fairies cannot be trained by a big force, and even if they can be trained, it is impossible for them to be so servile and let this boy drive them. I've said it before, this guy is definitely playing dumb, it seems we underestimated him. I've said it before that this guy is extraordinary, I didn't expect he actually has four such stunning maids. Who is this guy? The people around finally recovered from their shock, and they were amazed, looking at Qin Mu with envy and jealousy. It's hard to see four beautiful women like these on weekdays. But this mysterious boy took them all for himself. I don't know how many male warriors were filled with envy and jealousy. Especially Lin Yifei, his face became extremely embarrassed at this moment. He felt as if his chest was kicked hard by someone. Frustration, humiliation, pain, shame, all kinds of emotions surged in his heart. Especially when he saw Mu Qingzi, Li Qingluo, Ji Hongyi, and Zhang Luoshan being respectful to the boy, he was jealous to the point of going crazy, and his resentment was indescribable. He couldn't figure out why these four beautiful women would be maids for Qin Mu. He even felt that Qin Mu was the emperor who was high above and looked down on the world. On the other hand, he was like an ant, not worth mentioning. This was hard for him to accept. But the facts were in front of him, and he had no choice but to admit it. He felt his heart beating violently and almost couldn't breathe. Even Lin Feng, who had always believed in making a big deal out of a small matter, couldn't help but flash a trace of instinctive envy and jealousy in his eyes when he saw this scene. But at the same time, he was more daunted in his heart. He pondered for a while and was about to say something. Suddenly, a loud puff sounded from the high platform, like the sound of a fountain bursting. Hearing this sound, one can guess that the water output of this fountain must be very large. Everyone present was refreshed, and all of them retracted their eyes and cast their eyes on the high platform. But the next moment, everyone was stunned. They really saw the fountain. But, the water in this fountain is blood red. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. At the beginning, I gave the future empress her death. I became stronger because I was stupid. Author, Leng Mian Buletin Leng. Chapter 439. And there were hot bubbles coming out, just like blood. No, this is blood. The white-bearded old man from TNG Pavilion standing on the platform was looking up at the sky, and blood was gushing out of his mouth like it was free. It was several feet high. From a distance, it looked like a red fountain. This scene scared everyone and they looked at it in confusion. The blood was scarlet, dazzling, and had a strong smell of blood, dyeing the entire platform red. The scene was shocking, as if they had experienced a fierce battle. Gilialo. Looking at the scene on the platform, everyone swallowed their saliva at the same time, feeling a little dry in the throat. This is... What happened? This old man won't die, will he? It shouldn't be. He's the elder of TNG Pavilion. He shouldn't die so easily. That's hard to say. I think he's in a very bad state. He seems to be on the verge of death. What did he calculate? Did he calculate some terrible thing? Hiss, it can't be true. Don't talk nonsense. I think it's more like he was hit by some ancient curse. TNG Pavilion is mysterious and unpredictable. Maybe there are some unspeakable secrets. That's too pitiful. But it's pitiful. Should we stay away from it? I'm afraid that if the blood sprays on us, it will be troublesome. A group of people talked a lot. Many of them widened their eyes and kept swallowing their saliva. Their eyes were full of horror. They felt that this matter was beyond their understanding. This completely overturned their thinking. This old man was the elder of TNG Pavilion. His cultivation was unfathomable. He vomited blood twice because of fortune-telling. And the second time was particularly serious, almost dying. What did he predict? If they were not close and witnessed the scene with their own eyes, they would have suspected that the old man was deliberately acting for them. Could it be that the old man really predicted a great terror? Thinking of this possibility, many people trembled all over, with a trace of panic on their faces. If this was true, wouldn't they also encounter a great terror? The more they thought about it, the more frightened they became. At this moment, they felt that they were getting closer and closer to death. Even Lin Feng, the second son of Twilight City, who had always been very stable, frowned, with a hint of solemnity and hesitation in his eyes. Although he didn't understand what happened, this situation should be the time for him, the second son of Twilight City, to go up and save people. Although he was not familiar with the old man's strength was there. Not to mention other things, just the fact that he was the elder of TNG Pavilion was worthy of his help. What's more, this old guy is a genuine Saint Realm expert. He just killed the Iron Tower commander of Twilight City with one strike. His strength can be imagined. But he really didn't dare to go up to save people, because he didn't know the situation of this old man in TNG Pavilion. What if the other party was possessed by a demon, or cursed as others said? Then he might have to sacrifice his life, which is not worth it. After all, his own safety is the most important. Lin Feng didn't dare, let alone Lin Yifei. If he didn't care about his face, he might have hidden behind Lin Yifei. The blood sprayed by this old man was much more than what he had just shed, and it seemed like there was no end. It seemed that he would not stop until all the blood in his body was sprayed out. This was too terrible. He just broke his hand and didn't want to lose his life again. Broken hands can be reattached, but lost lives cannot be resurrected. The only calm people on the field were Qin Mu and the four women in red. Qin Mu glanced at the white-bearded old man on the stage. No, it should be the red-bearded old man now. He felt a little funny, shook his head, and felt helpless. This old guy must have been trying to get back at him again, but he was unlucky enough to be attacked. Qin Mu still admired this old man. He had vomited blood when he was trying to get back at Mu Kingzi and Li Qingluo just now. I didn't expect that he was still not giving up and even wanted to get back at me. To use a common saying, this is simply looking for shit in the toilet with the light on. When he was still very weak, Tianjizi of the Kangyu dynasty would get back at him if he got back at him. Now that he is so powerful, it is no different from looking for death to get back at him. However, Qin Mu had no intention of taking action at this time. This old man tried to understand his privacy without his consent, so he deserved it now. He must be taught a lesson to let him know that peeping into other people's privacy is a very immoral behavior and must be changed. Qin Mu folded his arms, smiling, watching the scene in front of him like watching a play, and found it quite interesting. After all, you can't see such a wonderful fountain performance anywhere else. Qin Mu didn't make any moves, let alone the four women in red clothes, they just watched quietly. Who? At this time, the old man was still spurting blood crazily. As the sound of blood splashing sounded, drops of blood fell onto the ring, forming pools of blood one after another, which looked extremely miserable. In just a few breaths, the old man's figure became visibly stooped, as if he had shrunk. Not only that, his old face covered with ravines and wrinkles became paler. Since he was raising his head, his eyes could not be seen, but everyone could already imagine his expression of grief, anger, and extreme pain. And all this seems to be just the beginning. Cough, 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 cough. The old man began to cough violently again. And it became more and more rapid, and with every breath, a blood arrow spurted out, which was extremely terrifying. No. Not good. This old guy seems to be unable to hold on any longer. Someone screamed, with a look of fear on their face. Isn't this old guy really planning something terrible? Another person murmured to himself, cold sweat dripping from his forehead, his legs were trembling, and he was scared to death. This time the old man vomited blood at a terrifyingly fast speed. In the blink of an eye, blood spurted 5 or 6 times. Every time he vomited blood, he looked weaker and weaker. Moreover, his hair was turning white rapidly, and his originally shiny skin had lost its luster and was covered with wrinkles. In an instant, the old man aged dozens of years. The whole person looked extremely old, like an old man in his twilight years. It looked like he might die at any time. This scene immediately caused bursts of exclamations, and many people were even trembling with fear. At this moment, no matter how stupid they were, they knew that the old man must have figured out something terrible, or had encountered some terrible curse. Otherwise, he wouldn't be vomiting blood at all, and he wouldn't look like he's on the verge of death. Oh my God, it's so evil. Could this old guy have provoked some kind of ghost? I feel like he must have figured out something terrible. No, let's leave quickly. If we stay any longer, a terrible disaster might happen. A group of people were so frightened that they all turned around and fled. They didn't even care about the 4 fairies on the field and the ensuing commotion, for fear of being implicated in it. Suddenly, the entire square was filled with people and chaos. The situation seems a bit bad. Should we take action? Seeing the old man's appearance, Lin Feng's eyebrows twitched slightly and he sighed secretly in his heart. I was worried that I would be implicated if I took action, but if I didn't take action, the elder of Tianji Pavilion would just die in Twilight City, which seemed unreasonable. And at this moment, a loud bell-like sound suddenly resounded high in the sky. At the beginning, I gave the future empress her death. I became stronger because I was stupid. Author, Len Mian Buletin Leng. Chapter 440. Who dares to hurt my son? Then an old man in black robe flew from a distance. The aura of this black-robed old man was terrifying. He stepped into the void, exuding a biting chill, like an unparalleled demon lord who walked out of a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood. When they saw the old man in black robe, everyone's expressions changed drastically. Because this old man in black robe is the Lord of Twilight City. This Twilight City Major has reached the 6th level of sainthood and is extremely powerful. He is a peerless hero, decisive in killing and ruthless in his methods. He is a terrifying existence. Rumor has it that this person once obtained an ancient jade in a secret place in his early years. This ancient jade contains a great secret. He hid this ancient jade in his chest, so even if he was seriously injured, as long as he had this ancient jade to protect him, he would not die. He also relied on this jade to kill a monster at the 9th level of the Saint Realm, which shocked all the major forces around him and established his prestige in Twilight City. However, later there were rumors that as time passed, the power of the ancient jade gradually weakened and eventually lost its effect completely. But even so, the prestige of the Twilight City Lord has not diminished at all, and he is still an extremely dangerous existence. The appearance of the old man in black robe immediately silenced the entire square, and everyone's eyes were focused on the old man in black robe, full of awe. At this time, the old man in black robe was already standing beside Lin Feng, less than 100 meters away from Qin Mu. "Father, save me! Father, save me! Father, you have to avenge me, father!" Seeing the old man in black robe appear, Lin Yifei, who had gradually recovered, his eyes lit up and he immediately pretended to be dying again. He struggled to crawl towards the old man in black robe, hugged the other man's ankle and cried. At this time, he was in a miserable state, with disheveled hair and blood all over his body. Where his arm was broken, you could even see the dense white bones inside, which looked shocking. But Lin Yifei's eyes were extremely vicious and resentful, staring at Qin Mu like a poisonous snake. His reinforcements have finally arrived. As long as his father takes action, the boy will definitely not get the good news. Moreover, the old man in Tianji Pavilion has run out of gas and is unable to move at all. He will definitely not be able to take action even if he wants to. Seeing Lin Yifei hugging him, the black-robed old man frowned slightly, and a trace of distress flashed in his eyes. Although these three sons are usually arrogant and domineering, they have not made any big mistakes, and their qualifications are also good. The future is limitless, so I give him great love and expectations. Now that he has been reduced to this, the old man in black robe is naturally furious. However, he did not take action immediately. Instead, he calmly glanced at the old man with a white beard who was still spitting blood on the high platform. Then he looked at Qin Mu. After seeing the four fairies behind him, a flash of surprise flashed in his eyes, and then he slowly and reluctantly took it back. This situation was obviously a little unusual, and there was an elder from Tianji Pavilion on the stage who was constantly vomiting blood. He had to figure out what was going on. Although he is not very afraid of Tianji Pavilion, he is still a little afraid of the Wangxiang Immortal Palace behind Tianji Pavilion, and this face must be given. If you live to his age, you will not say that things are impeccable, but you will at least think a few more things. You will not be as simple-minded as Lin Yifei. This was actually done deliberately by the old man in black robe. The third son did not inherit his stability, but the second son inherited it perfectly. Therefore, he has been cultivating his second son as a successor, while adopting a laissez-faire attitude toward his third son, which led him to develop his current character. Because in his plan, the second son is responsible for managing Twilight City, and the third son is responsible for external operations, one internal and one external, with different divisions of labor. Yifei, don't worry, Dad will definitely help you seek justice. The old man in black robe knelt down and stroked Lin Yifei's cheek and said with doting in his eyes. Thank you, father. Lin Yifei said excitedly, then looked at Qin Mu with a look of resentment. Just wait, my father is already here, and he will cut you into pieces later. Lin Yifei said through gritted teeth. Qin Mu maintained a calm attitude from beginning to end, and did not show any panic at the appearance of the black-robed old man. Like an outsider, quietly observing the development of the situation. The old man in black robe also took a deep look at Qin Mu, then looked at Lin Feng and asked, what happened here? Lin Feng recounted what had just happened in detail. The old man in black robe frowned tightly and immediately looked at the old man from Tianji Pavilion on the stage, ignoring the pleading look of his third son. He vomited blood twice in a row. Could he really have calculated something? The old man in black robe murmured to himself. He fell into deep thought and his eyes kept moving, as if he was weighing something. Not long after, his eyes suddenly became firm, and there was a hint of distress, and then with a thought in his mind, he disappeared in an instant. When he appeared again, he had already landed on the ring and slapped the old man on the chest. Instantly, a gentle force with a mysterious aura poured into the old man's body, helping him to resolve the backlash that was eroding his internal organs. When the backlash completely dissipated, the old man with the white beard finally stopped vomiting blood. Cough, cough, cough. On the high platform, the white-bearded old man coughed violently, coughing up blood while struggling to get up. His face was pale, his whole body was trembling, and his old eyes were full of disbelief, anger, and fear. The first sentence he said made the black-robed old man stunned. "Dad, no, Grandpa, I was wrong.